Hello and welcome to Doing Business in Rwanda. I'm Irene Birunju Mugisha. Rwanda's tourism sector has grown steadily over the years to become the second largest source of export earnings after coffee. Since its prioritization as the key economic contributor in 2003 by government of Rwanda, the travel and tourism industry confirmed its importance to the economy with 4% growth during 2012, and this trend is expected to continue during the next 5 years. Rwanda is steadily emerging as a well-known tourist destination internationally. In the last 5 years, the country's efforts to develop travel and tourism in a sustainable manner is paying off, as the industry has experienced dramatic growth in 2012 by hitting the 1 million mark of visiting tourists, and the number of tourists is expected to grow to 17% in the next 2 years. The aim is for the sector to become the country's leading foreign exchange earner as well as a major economic contributor.
Tourism is one of the sectors that has benefited from this business environment. It's quite easy to start a business in Rwanda. Currently, it only takes 6 hours to register a business. We also have looked at incentives in different sectors. Tourism has benefited a lot from some of these incentives. For example, when you're looking at the construction sector and hotels, part of the big amount of money that the hotels put up is in construction, whether it's related to taxes, for some of the construction material, or bringing in some of the equipment into the country at very low tax.
The growth has been phenomenal. We've seen basically a doubling up of travelers' numbers and tourists into the country that come through Kigali International Airport. For the last 3 years, Rwanda has actually had a very important characteristic role in that out of the 500 or so thousand travelers that have come in by air, about 400,000 have been carried by Rwanda Air.
The business environment out here in Rwanda, having worked in the East African bloc in almost all the countries, I would describe it as so far the best. It is the easiest environment to do business here because there's a lot of intention to assist. Whatever you do here, remember, in every corporation like Serena, we assigned someone in the Rwanda Development Board to take care of our needs. It is easy to meet leaders here, very easy to meet leaders here. And that makes it very easy to come up with ECAPs.
Tourism generated $281 million, that is about 178 billion Rwanda francs in 2012, the previous year, a 17% increase from the previous year. In the first quarter of 2012, an estimate of 744,000 visitors were hosted in the country, an increase of 22% compared to the same period in 2011. This is a 16% increase in leisure visitors and an 8% increase in business visitors.
Tourism currently contributes 3.7% to GDP. However, it's also the #1 foreign exchange earner, and this has been the case for the last 5 years. I mentioned the $282 million. When you look at the exports of goods altogether, is when you compare with the service, with tourism alone. So it's actually 50% of all the exports, so to speak, that the country gets, and that puts tourism as a key sector in the drive of the economic development of the country.
I think it all adds up to the real growth, both from the levels of micro and the macroeconomics, because this is a situation where if you had enough rooms, then you are able to attract bigger groups, conventions, and that kind of business. And as I said, you've seen that for quite some time we may not have been able really to attract bigger groups, because once they come in and they realize the infrastructure is not there, then of course they look for another. But with enough rooms around us, then you start getting conventions of 1,000 people, 2,000 people. Once these people are here, the multiplier effect, even the city will not be able, and you'll see from September, will not be able to have even enough cabs to ride the guests around.
Tourists to Rwanda are drawn by the country's natural beauty. Key draw cards include the Volcanoes National Park, lush green hills, tropical forests, mountains, lakes, as well as game viewing including zebras, chimpanzees, antelopes, buffaloes, and about 670 species of birds.
When Rwanda decided that tourism would be one of the key sectors, it was back in 2001, where we had a tourism strategy. We were looking at $8 million. That's how much money was coming into the sector. In 2012, we had $282 million. In the last 5 years, we've seen, double-digit growth that has been, happening every year, with the exception of 2009, where we saw a decrease, like everybody, I think, in tourism around the world, of 6% here in Rwanda. But since then, in 2010, we saw again a big jump of 26% increase. And last year, if we compare, 2011 and 2012, we had a 12% increase. Looking at this year, of course, we have now put up an EDPRS2, the Economic Development Poverty Strategy that the country has, which is even more ambitious. And we look at tourism as having a 25% increase every year. We know that this is not going to be easy, but when we look at some of the infrastructure that has been put in place, like the convention center, we think that once it's operational, we can really leapfrog and be able, on an average, to be going at the 25% growth, which is what is our vision for 2017.
Connectivity is a key factor in any kind of economic growth and development of any nation. And our role as Rwandair has been to basically open up the country to the rest of the world. And this is also supported by the many airlines that have started flying into the country over the last 2 years. We've seen probably 5 or 6 international airlines start flying directly into Kigali. Of course, this comes as a result of Kigali volumes growing. As a resident airline or a national carrier, our role has been to create that hub effect that has attracted a lot more other international airlines.
Rwanda is ranked number 2 in Africa in terms of the index on infrastructure. There's lots of construction, not only construction of commercial buildings, but construction of hotels. If you look around, now we have the Marriott's next door, we have the Radisson Blu, we have a hotel down here that will also be done by the Radisson, we have the Hilton, you have the Sheraton. All these are hotels that are actually coming into Kigali, and that shows you that though we were low, that could be a thing of the past, because we are currently growing at a very high speed, and this is why we are putting a lot of effort on skill development, of staff, so that we meet the needs once all these rooms are up and running.
In 2012, tourism industry topped export growth, making it the country's biggest foreign exchange earner and one of the top job creators. The government has invested capital worth $117 million in the tourism sector and is expected to create 1,393 jobs.
I have someone from the Rwanda Development Board who is assigned to help me in my needs. And these people are very available, very available. So the people who are helping you are very available. So there is a lot of intention from the government, and I think that is why you see all the massive development in infrastructure that you are seeing right now. It's because people have realized that it is easy to do business in Rwanda. The environment is very conducive.
The setup of the Rwanda Development Board, which was created a few years back in 2009, was, one way that government ensured it would be easy for an investor who was interested in coming to a country, investing and getting all the information in one area. If I take the example of tourism, we had, the Office of Tourism that was in charge of promotion and managing the national parks, and then we had the Investment Authority that was looking at attracting investments in the tourism sector as well. However, one of the things that, in terms of information that would be missing is understanding what kind of investment are required for what kind of tourists. So, these two different institutions almost had different objectives. So now today with the Rwanda Development Board that is, has the tourism function basically, which is to ensure that the sector grows, whether it's in terms of investment, whether it's in terms of attracting more tourists into the country, it's easier to be able to know what are the type of investment that we want to attract because we understand the target market.
The sector targets to contribute $340 million of foreign direct investments this year, almost 10% more than last year. This, however, calls for a development in community-based tourism and at the same time extending the country's rich tourism sites to its citizens. At the moment, one of the key challenges is that Rwandans perceive tourist initiatives as being aimed at foreigners.
We're looking at it at two levels. One is the numbers, the quantity of rooms. How many more rooms can we have in the country? But also, and maybe more importantly, is the quality. So we're looking at, one, attracting the right investments and the brands. We have, for example, Marriott that is going to be opening up by end of this year, which is the plan. We just registered Sheraton, which is a big brand that will also be coming into the country, and an investment. These two investments alone are worth 160 million, a bit more than 160 million dollars into the economy, and they will also bring more rooms. More than 250 for the Marriott alone. We're looking at villas and 70 villas and more for Sheraton. So that's the first thing, really bringing a new investment, increasing the number of rooms. But on the other hand as well, we're also looking at upgrading the existing ones.
One of the challenges as we came in was the supply chain. We did not have enough of the commodities that are used in the hotel industry. Okay. So we started by lots of course, importation. And when you import, you pay, the costs are quite high. We were able to work with the farmers. We brought in people, they trained these farmers, showed them, even gave seedlings, and worked with them slowly to improve this supply chain. And in fact, it was very highly recognized by the IFC. There's a document to that effect. And today, I can attest that I almost buy everything from here.
The tourism industry needs to be propelled higher to allow more tourists in the market and elevate the development of the industry and accrue more benefits to regional citizens. Last year, about 666,000 tourists visited various tourist attractions in Rwanda, with nationals constituting 22%.
It will start with the elite, understanding really what it is and what it brings. Because if you look at just a single easy example is the Schengen republics, in Europe. In Europe, you go to one country, you get your visa from whichever country, you can travel to any other country without any need of a visa. From that standpoint, from that understanding, once the elite have really understood and are able to permeate this knowledge to the lower level, to the local persons to understand. And let me give you an example. Even during the old East African community, you were able to fly from the Serengeti direct as an airstrip to land in Entebbe. This is what we want.
Despite the fact that tourism is relatively new in Rwanda when compared to Kenya and Tanzania, the country is striving to gear the sector to compete with other regional partners.
If we want more tourists coming to the market, it's important that we have the capacity for them to fly into the country easily. We've seen tremendous growth in terms of airlines coming into the country just over the last 3 years, which we've moved from just having one airline, SN Brussels, to KLM, Turkish Airlines, Qatar, that have just moved into the country in the last 3 years. So there's a lot of things that the government has done and continues to do. Specifically for the mice market, we are going to look at starting a convention bureau, which we're starting this year. And this convention bureau will basically be able to promote Rwanda as a conference destination.
As the region grows economically, more hubs are going to be required. And Rwanda has positioned itself in that by one, the process you've seen that has begun to extend and expand the current international airport at Kigali, but also to be followed in the next 5 years with the new Bugesera International Airport that creates Rwanda among the best hubs, not only in the region but on the continent, with our strategic location in the heart of Africa, definitely touching any part of Africa from Rwanda will always be easier than getting out of any tip of the continent.
The figures of the last 5 years or so have been to a low level, okay? But I think things have really changed. Don't forget that Rwanda, 2012, we hit the 1 million mark. Okay. So it is no longer at a low level. In fact, the growth is estimated to go up by about 17% between last year and this year.
Rwanda still lags its neighbors in terms of revenue contribution. The country brings forward 7% to all tourism revenues generated in East Africa, while Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda contribute 44%, 25%, and 24% respectively. And with tourism, Rwanda hosts only 3% of Europeans visiting the East African community and 11% of all Americans visiting East African community.
One of the key factors that promotes aviation and easy travel is free and easy access to visas. So single visa for the region is the best thing that could happen to our tourism industry. And tourism meaning both the standard tourism that we are used to, but also to conferences and so on. In Rwanda, we have already moved steps ahead by not only waiving visa to our neighbors, but also to the whole of the continent. All Africans can basically jump on a plane and get to the airport and be issued a visa on arrival. This we have already seen create a very, very vibrant feeling among travelers. We are seeing more Africans finding it much easier to come and visit the country, spend a few days between their travels. Those that we carry from West Africa through Kigali, in most cases, have had to take on stopovers for a day or two, simply because they are not constrained by visa issues.
It's very good news. As stakeholders in tourism, especially the tourism stakeholders, are quite interested in seeing this becoming a reality. We know that it's not necessarily very easy, especially when it comes to harmonizing some of the immigration policies, but we are very convinced that this is really going to be a big boost to tourism. We already have started doing some work in it, especially when I look at the private sector, which established the East African Tourism Platform, because travelers, when they come to a destination, they want to go to East Africa. So we've seen a trend where people are looking at doing more than a country. They want to do 2-3 countries in one trip. So if we're able to make it easy for them with just one visa, and they're able to see the diversity that the 3 countries and East Africa large offers, we know that it will be a higher incentive for them to choose to come to this part of the world instead of going to another part of the world. So we're quite excited, and we look forward, and we'll of course play our role to make this happen.
I think this is the best thing that has happened to East Africa community as a bloc. Because first, it makes this easier for the leisure traveler, corporate traveler, to travel across the East African bloc without any need to bother of what happens next in terms of visas. It is also easy now for East Africa as a bloc to market. There is strength in marketing East Africa as a single destination. Yeah? Because some of these strengths are the ones that will actually see East Africa as a bloc being able to compete now internationally.